Hi everyone, thanks for having me. My name is Vasily, also known as Defivas. I'm a founder of Velvet.Capital, and I've been in crypto since 2016, trading, investing, going through the ICO craziness. DeFi summer was on the VC side as well, and managing my own DeFi portfolio. And I realized that the space is becoming more and more fragmented and complicated. So right now we have thousands of different DeFi protocols, hundreds of chains, and millions of tokens launching every day. Now with Pump Fund and other launch pads, you have 10,000s of different tokens that you just cannot keep track of. And so you really gotta be 24/7 on with a team of analysts to be able to win in the space right now. Now, this is where AI comes to the rescue, and we've seen AI having a big impact on the space since last year. Obviously, as with a lot of other things with crypto, it started with a hype. So if you remember Truth Terminal and Goat, the first AI agent which raised funding from Mark Andreessen, AI 16Z, which was the first agentic DAO, and then we saw an explosion of different launchpads started by virtuals. And obviously at the peak, we have tens of launchpads, thousands of agents launching every day. So we already gone through the first cycle of boom and bust. And right now we see that there's a flight to quality in this whole agentic space. What started as just Twitter slop bots, now converging to real agents with real utility on chain. Now, when we look at all the different DeFi use cases, I like to think of it in two sort of axes here. First, functionality, and second, autonomy. So we have low functionality and low autonomy agents, which are acting more of a research terminal agents. And it's pretty simple to make sure that you have the right data and the right models to be able to give research. Now, what happened last year and what actually brought this whole agentic meta to the spotlight was the high autonomy and low functionality agents. So we saw tens of bots on Twitter posting and having some sort of a personality to them, right? It's the first try of adding more autonomy to the agents without necessarily getting any functionality. Now, where we started to play at Velvet and where we see the first use cases emerge is the Copilot section. So Copilot section means that you have high level of functionality. Agents can execute DeFi tasks for you, trades, and actually help you do useful actions on chain. But at the same time, they are not really autonomous. So you still got to tell them what to do. You got to prompt them, and then only they will do what you say. Now, the real question is, when are we getting to high functionality and high autonomy agents? So this is the real holy grail of DeFi, where instead of having a team of analysts working for you 24/7, you have agents being able to execute and manage your portfolio on chain. Now, we were one of the first agents out there. We launched an incubated Velvet Unicorn, which was one of the first agents on virtuals. It was launched in October 24 before virtuals completely exploded with usability, and actually numbers of agents went to just completely insane numbers. And what we realized is that it's actually quite hard to build this high autonomous and high functioning agents. So our journey started also with creating a Twitter bot, making sure it has access to information, making sure it can share different crypto news, etc. And then gradually we morphed it into Copilot, and right now we have a more complicated system. So this is what we started with. It's a very simple swarm where we had a manager agent, which takes a user input, whether it's a direct prompt for you, or if it's a Twitter reply or a tweet tagging the agent. And then it triages the prompt and passes to one of the three workers, executor, analyst, and newsmaker, depending on the task. So it was a very simple setup, but it kind of proved that the multi-model and multi-agent model works fairly well. And where we got to right now is essentially this complex, self-improving multi-agent organization. And the way it works is we have several sets of front ends. One is our app itself, where users can interact with the agents. And then it has a CEO. We promoted the manager, so now it's a CEO. This agent has multiple types of categories in mind. And then depending on the question, depending on the prompt, it categorizes the task, passes to one of the agents, and then most importantly, it has DeFi specialists executing any on-chain transactions for you, and then feeding the feedback to the CEO to make sure that the main agent can check the result of the transaction and then improve the prompt further for future actions. So this is something that we built out throughout several months, and which is functional right now. So I'm very excited that we're able to cover the whole end-to-end journey, from discovery to analysis to the actual on-chain execution. Now, let's get into more details on how this whole thing works. So this is the main CEO agent. I put a few examples here of what it can do, but essentially it's a separate model that takes your inputs, and it has categories such as token-specific questions, general crypto questions, non-crypto blockchain-related question, token trade request, technical analysis, smart wallet activity, questions about virtuals, because we realized a lot of users wanted to dive deeper there, and questions related to our own product and platform. And because it's a separate agent, it doesn't get overloaded by the context window. So the main purpose is just taking the question and funneling it to the relevant agent. What it allows us to do, it allows us to scale this to tens or maybe up to hundreds of different types of queries and tasks. Now, another important thing is that LLMs are generally quite good at understanding your prompt, processing the information, and giving you general answers. They're not really good in managing DeFi strategies or quant strategies. And so what we did, we included a quant statistical model as one of the agents, which is trained based on 100 different technical parameters, back-tested, and then wrapped into an agent that whenever you ask the main CEO about any sort of quant parameter, price prediction, or anything related to actual quantitative data, it funnels it to this prediction agent. Now, the way it works is we have combination of neural networks, cat boost models, and essentially we had a deep level of optimization to find correct predictions. So we actually probably there's like a year or even more of deep research that led to creation of this model. What is interesting is that it's very similar to the models used in traditional finance, hedge funds. And so now we probably one of the first teams out there that's combining the LLMs and sort of more of an entertainment agents with the actual serious quantitative models here. Now, another important agent is the execution agent, because in the end of the day, we don't want it to just talk. We want it to do useful actions on chain. And essentially what it does, it handles token swaps, DeFi actions, bridging, any sort of on-chain transaction that you want to perform. And the stack is pretty simple. We have large language model that actually extracts the intent. Now, using this intent, we generate a payload, which we pass to our intent execution engine. So if some of you heard the previous presentation about intents, we do think that it's a very important aspect, because in the end of the day, LLMs are pretty good at identifying what you want to do. They're not as good as actually creating an on-chain transaction for you. So using intents in the backend helps us simplify and reduce the amount of hallucinations. Now, just to bring everything together, this is the stack that we have right now. So on the application layer, our own DeFi app is essentially acting as a front end for the users. We have several different front ends that we support as well, whether it's other AI agents, asset managers, trading terminals, etc. And then at the heart of it, we have intent orchestration layer. So this is exactly the element I mentioned that helps you convert the user prompt, what the user wants to do, into actual on-chain transaction down the line. And then we have several solvers that we're working with, including our own, to make sure that the users get the best execution. Now, this is one of the examples that I wanted to show you, which just recently we sort of put everything together, starting from discovery. So we ask what's happening in the market today. Now the agent CEO takes this question, categorizes it, passes it to the researcher, and then gives you a quick summary of what's happening here. And then even gives you like a few suggestions of interesting projects to look at. Now we can drill down, say, okay, what tokens are looking bullish, right? Or what tokens would you suggest looking at? Gives you a quick quant information as well. You can kind of drill down a little bit more to get a little bit more details on the project. Technical analysis, essentially it's a separate model that does a TA specifically based on the time series of data, both prices, volumes, and holders. And then finally, after getting all this information, you can ask it to execute the transaction for you. And so now what's happening, the user is asking to buy this token with a certain amount of USDC. We take this intent and then we generate a payload, sending it to the wallet. Now, right now, obviously, if you're a fan of external wallets, you can just use it right here in the app. But we're also integrating it into in-app wallets and vaults. So that's just a quick example of what it can do. And then this is sort of the next step that we see right now in the whole agentic economy. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the virtuals ecosystem, but one interesting work that we're doing is creating this ACP, Agent Commerce Protocol, to allow different agentic systems communicate with each other, actually acting like a nation state of different agentic participants. So here, every agent can request a service from every other agent and essentially communicate and collaborate to perform some complex workflow together. So for example, there's an agent that's running a hedge fund. It can ask our agent for research and initial data, can ask it for price prediction. It can ask another agent for risk analysis, if there is an agent specializing on that. And essentially, combining inputs from multiple agents, it can basically go through pretty complex workflow, ending with on-chain execution. Now, this is a quick example of one of the tests of the quant model that we've run. So again, something that we helping is the AI treasury management. And this agentic model was able to beat hodl-only strategy, which is pretty cool, and this team appreciated it. Now, a few main takeaways here. I think those are probably three most important things if I were to basically squeeze everything into those. First is the multi-agent setup that we built and that we just covered helps avoid context overload and hallucinations. So we think of it as one of the most important ways how to build agentic systems. It basically means that instead of having one large model and try to squeeze everything into it, we have a bunch of small specialized model, and it allows us to make sure that we don't overload them, and they actually, each of them is conducting the task at hand. Second, LLMs can be complemented by statistical models and quant algos. I think this is also a very important point because I see a lot of people just try to use LLMs, 100%, different types of them, without actually complementing it with quant algos. And I spoke with a lot of people in DeFi and DeFi strategists. We still think that there is a value of having quant models there, especially since most of the parameters are deterministic. And then finally, the intent-based architecture can simplify agentic DeFi actions. So this is quite important because in the end of the day, we want useful agents who do things for us on-chain, and using intent architecture is essentially making sure they have all the necessary tools to do it. This is what I wanted to leave you with. Happy to answer any questions. I think we still have a few minutes left, and yeah, happy to have a quick discussion with you guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Just a quick question. Super impressive, by the way. It's really, really cool. Are there active strategies that will trade like on your platform without your input? Like you don't need to sign a transaction or anything like that.
This is actually a great question. Yeah, I should have covered it myself in the presentation. But yeah, just thinking about this this sort of autonomy and functionality framework, right? Where we want to get is to the top right corner. Unfortunately, I see a lot of people who promise you that there is an agent which you can just tell, okay, make me money on chain, and it does it for you. I mean, if it is true, then it means everyone would use it, and the margins would collapse to zero. And I think the truth is somewhere in the middle, where you would still prompt the strategy, different parameters and constraints that you wanted to run. So, for example, if it's a stablecoin strategy, you can talk about your target APYs, your target risk exposure, your target, I don't know, maybe even protocols that you wanted to choose from, and then run it, right? And then my prompt might be different from yours. So at the end of the day, we're going to have different strategies, but they would run automatically and try to optimize for whatever inputs we give them.
If you don't mind. So I'm thinking of something like even a stop loss. So you set your position, but you want to have a stop loss, but you're asleep, and it triggers. Like, what do you like? Are there any solutions for that?
Yeah. I mean, that's actually one of the use cases. So what we have is we built a vault infrastructure. So the agent would be essentially managing a vault for you, right? You would define vault parameters, any constraints, and then initial prompt for the agent. So the future might look like you tell him, okay, buy me every new token once it crosses 100K and 1,000 holders, sell 50% when it goes to X, or stop loss 20% below entry price, and it would just run strategy. I think again, just going back to my last point, is a lot of people try to do it with LLMs, whereas some of the parameters are highly deterministic. You actually don't need LLMs or agents. So I think it's very important that we actually combine LLMs with quant models for use cases like this.
So you say that like this challenge of an agent that, if there was an agent that you could just start and run, make money, that would be ideal, but it's kind of like this idealized version or view. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have like these very prescriptive and necessarily iterative, from the attention of the user, descriptions of what you want as an end user. Is there any room in between? Like, is it possible, instead of at every step being like, okay, well, it's done this, now I want this, it's done this, now I want this, can we jump a couple steps, or do you think, because with efficiency, I guess, comes information risk, in the sense that as the end user, it erodes the longer that you may be away from it. So in your perspective, it's really a subjective question. Do you think that, how necessary is the end user in this? Because I worry about a future whereby we're abstracting the difficulty of DeFi only to become a slave to this terminal that like requires our attention to function. Are we just making a problem all again, or is it possible to avoid?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, I do think it's a spectrum, right? You have highly prescriptive copilots where you need to actually define every transaction, like the example I showed you. And then on the other extreme, just, okay, make me money. I don't care how. I do think there's a whole spectrum in between, and it's very important. I mean, prompt engineering is going to be very important because it will depend on the user how you set the initial parameters. But at the end of the day, I mean, what a lot of people do right now, they go to ChatGPT, for example, and they ask, okay, create me a prompt that is optimizing for X, right? So as a user, maybe I don't necessarily need to think of all the parameters and define all of them in advance. I can still use the help of the agent to even define it initially, then I tweak it, and then I let it run. So that's probably where I would see it going, yeah. But I do think right now we're still at the stage when the initial prompt will need to be given by the user, and it's very important because that's the only thing that will differentiate your money-making strategy from my money-making strategy. All right, thank you so much. Appreciate it.